We are live from the post office.
West.
That's right. How you doing?
I'm doing tremendous.
Yeah.
Welcome to the second ever Café Hangout, or as WWE would say, the second anniversary.
You could say that, yeah. And this is the first time we've ever had a guest.
That is true. Joining us, true British royalty here at Post Office West. You know him from the British Wrestling Experience, Martin Bushby.
Hey, thanks for flying me out on your private jet all the way to Toronto just to take part in this Google Hangout today.
You got on the Postal Lear jet, came all the way over just to do this half-hour Cafe Hangout show with us. Thank you. Not many people would make that entire trip. You brought your lovely wife with you as well.
I did indeed.
And here we are.
Hello, Lisa.
Does Post Office West live up to its billing?
Oh, more than.
You're one of our first. You're our very first guest we've had in here, actually.
I feel so privileged. I feel like such an honor for me to be the first person in Post Office West. I've just been actually admiring John's huge book collection over here, some hidden gems in there.
Yeah, you were taking a look at Diana Hart's very rare book, Under the Mat, her 2001 release, which also coincided with the 2001 removal of said book from bookstores after a pending legal action.
We're also made aware of what that book costs right now on the aftermarket.
That's true. You can get used copies
let's grab a where is it there? Do
we have the copy? Maybe we could do a live reading of some excerpts from Diana Hart's book. I've not read it since 2001. Let's take a look at this. Yeah, because we were alerted by one reader that they sold this book 10 years ago for $150, and you got to spend almost $90 to get a new copy of this these days. And I bought this at my local bookstore in 2001 just because I used to buy wrestling books, not knowing that this would be such a
let me hold it up
kind of in demand book.
Of course, Under the Mat. We won't get into some of the things that are in this.
It might the show might take a drastic turn if we're to get into some of the stories here about what was going on with in Diana's world in 2001. But there you go. I would say pick it up, but I don't think that's even an option for most people, nor going to be their top of their priority list. Unlike listening to Martin Bushby. It's at the top of everyone's list here on this Thursday.
Sure it is, yes.
How are you enjoying our fine city of Toronto? We realized, or you informed us, you were here before because you're a major film producer on top of that, beyond all this wrestling stuff you deal with.
Well, I would hardly describe myself as a major film producer.
Did you or did you not have a movie at the Toronto Film Festival in 2007?
Yes, I did. In the
there you go. That's cred for life.
More than a lot of people I know.
In the short film corner version. So basically, they had a bunch of short films they selected from all over the world and showed them all in one big block. It's your former alma mater of Ryerson University.
Yep, they are so proud of us and what we have moved on to. I regularly get updates asking for money from Ryerson, so they keep us in their thoughts. It's wonderful.
What brings you to Toronto? Of all the places in the world where you and your wife could vacation, why this city in November?
Well, obviously being from the UK, we're used to the cold weather, so that's not an issue for us really. But yeah, it's our 4th wedding anniversary today.
Wow, congratulations!
Today. Wow, awesome! What a way
so
to
we thought I'd spend
it
with you too.
I'm so sorry to drag you guys here.
Wow, 4 years. So I was married November of 2013. So we're just a year apart.
Wow.
When it comes to anniversaries.
Wow.
Yeah, you should remember that way. You were my best man.
When I really.
When was the date?
November 2nd. No,
really close.
Okay,
the complete opposite of the month.
December?
No, not quite December because I said November. The end of the month.
Okay, there we go.
Is there any video of Way's best man speech? That's something I think
actually, my speech was a video, so
it was a pretty great video. Actually,
the video was out there.
Yes.
Excellent.
Anyway, so as you have been going through Toronto here, what have been some of the highlights for you other than today getting to hang out with myself and Way?
Well, obviously that's number one, that goes without saying. But yeah, we went to all the usual tourist stuff. Niagara Falls was really breathtaking. Went to that yesterday. Castle Oma, I'm told it's the only castle in Canada. I don't know how true that is. That's what they told us on the tour. That was really interesting. Yeah, and just hanging out around Dundas Street and going to a lot of the bars. Yeah, it's been amazing. I know it's sort of like old hat for you guys.
No,
yeah,
no,
for
it's
us tourists.
I think Toronto is a great city to live in and to visit. There's like lots of stuff to do. I enjoy this city, so I don't find any of it cliche. The stuff you're going to.
Any impressions as a Brit traveling in Toronto of the city or the people that live in it?
Oh, it's a very diverse city, isn't it? Much like Sheffield, where me and Lisa, my wife, are from. Yeah, there's a lot of diversity, a lot of really some interesting flavors as you're walking around the city. Yeah.
So let's get into some wrestling discussion. Is your weekend going to feature any wrestling? Are you keeping up on any of the WWE's happenings this weekend?
Well, it'll depend if we can find a bar to watch either Takeover or Survivor Series in Toronto. But yeah, definitely, it's just a shame that Becky's not going to be involved. That's something that had got me hyped up for watching WWE. You know, I don't really watch a great deal of WWE, but yeah, watching Becky Lynch take on Ronda Rousey would have been amazing this weekend, but sadly not to be.
Yeah, I think that this show has garnered quite a lot of attention just in the last couple of days. That between Takeover and Survivor Series, it seems like a weekend that people are looking forward to the WWE offerings between both shows. It's not just one-sided with a lot of anticipation for Takeover and Survivor Series. It's some kind of the hangover the next day. That's going to be a very, very lengthy one.
I would say so. Yeah, and I feel like this particular Survivor Series has a bit more interest than previous, perhaps because the build has been a bit more respectful. You know, with only 2 weeks to do it, I think it's a card largely just kind of based on matches on paper. And I think with the sort of the crazy controversial way that they've kind of built up to this show over just the last 4 days, there's probably a bit of a spike in interest.
Yeah, hard to call this one crazy or controversial compared to the last show that they just ran.
Well, yes, that's right.
In comparison.
That is true. That is true.
Well, that's this weekend. I mean, where's your level of interest as you are several days out?
I mean, Takeover, I think, will always be a solid show. For Survivor Series, I'm really curious to see how they kind of get out of some of those finishes. That's always the challenge when you have champion versus champion, right? But I think Bryan versus Brock is a match that I've wanted to see for a long time. Didn't think that I would get to see it. And I'm curious about what the style of match is that the two of them will have, especially considering the new heel dynamics.
When you go out of your way to watch a major WWE pay-per-view, what is that like for you, given the time difference? And is it something you would watch live, or will you wait and watch after the fact at a more normal hour in your part of the world?
I suppose it's younger. I would have stayed up all night, you know, got a few friends around, had a few beers watching it. But now I'm finding more and more I try staying up and watch, and like the first hour in, I've fallen asleep already. But that's more like work and my age now. But yeah, I'll usually what I usually do now is on a Monday morning, I'll see what which matches have got the most hype, and which ones. And what's great about the network, you can just flick through it, can't you? So I just watch whichever matches have got the most buzz about them, which is becoming few and far between this year, I found.
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier, that I feel for a lot of fans, the ones that are trying to keep up with so many various products, that's the system where a lot of people have already adapted to, but more and more, it's going to be picking and choosing certain matches as opposed to sitting down and watching full shows, because you don't have 5 hours to be watching the Survivor Series, and maybe it's 1 or 2 matches that are worth your time. And when you're trying to follow just the WWE product alone, that seems to be a format most people are going to subscribe to in terms of just trying to keep up with the product. It's not feasible to watch all these complete shows every week.
No, and I think that's the opportunity that it gives everyone nowadays, isn't it? That you can just like pick and choose, and then there's stuff like you guys who are recommending things, so you just like can pick and choose whatever you want to watch. Especially like in the UK, there's so many promotions now, you can't throw a stone without hitting a UK British promotion, so it's hard to sort of keep track of it. So you just try and like pick and choose which ones that you want to watch.
What impact, positive or negative, has the WWE's extension into the UK with NXT UK had on the scene over there? Is it evident yet that has it harmed other promotions? Has it galvanized other promotions, or do you not really have a sense of it yet?
I do have kind of a sense of it, because obviously there's certain promotions they're not allowing your likes of Pete Dunne or your British Strong Style members to appear for, such as your Red Pros and promotions like that. But I wouldn't say it's negatively impacted them. It just means they've got to like look to other wrestlers to use, they can't use your bigger names. They've got to look around the talent pool that they've got in the UK to use, and obviously they'll lean more on the New Japan connection. But I think a lot of promotions are still being allowed to use WWE guys. I think it's, it all depends on the month whether they're allowed to use them or they're not. But I don't think it's affected it too negatively. It'll be interesting to see what happens in 2019, whether we do get World of Sport Series 2 and whether WWE is so bothered about the UK anymore, because it just seems to be they only push things into gear when World of Sport are announcing anything.
Yeah, it's interesting how reactive they have been, specifically there, whether it was the signing of Jim Ross or it's, fast forwarding to the launch of NXT UK, just getting it onto the network immediately. Do you see that it's enough of a wrestling hotbed that it can support all these different products, or do you see some that are going to be casualties of all of this as the WWE continues to put their footprint in? They're not just coming over twice a year anymore for a tour. They're now coming monthly for tapings, and the audience, it's their dollars and time can only be spread to so many promotions.
Well, exactly. And I also think we're also seeing that currently because less and less shows seem to be selling out as quickly as they used to. And now there is so much more choice. You've got WWE UK, Progress, NXT UK, and Red Pro, and you've got so many choice now that I've noticed that less and less shows seem to be getting less tickets sold for them, and they're not selling out as quickly as they used to. So I think, especially in 2019, we might see, the whole British wrestling bubble just burst altogether.
How many times have you listened to the NXT UK opening theme? Is it on your phone? I know you were a big fan of that theme.
No, yeah, I think because they play it so many times during the show, I was like, oh, this sounds like some god awful sort of like new metal from 99, 2000. I wouldn't even listen to then. No, yeah.
Wait, how is the chat room looking?
Looking good right now. We got about 15 people in the room right now. I want to say hi to Brandon, Alexander, Daniel, Eric, Jake, welcome, Surrender, Chris Thunder from Down Under. So Hansi even.
Of course, Hansi.
Do you want to go to some questions in the chat room for Martin?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Brandon asks you, Martin, what are your thoughts on Wade Barrett being in Lucha Underground? Are you following Lucha?
I am not following Lucha Underground. I was
really missing out.
I was aware that Wade Barrett was in Lucha Underground, but
I reveal this week, wasn't he?
Last week, yeah.
Last week.
Yeah, the mastermind behind everything. And we may never get a follow-up to it if Lucha Underground does not come back.
Have you heard much from Stu Bennett since his departure from the WWE?
Well, he was actually presenting World of Sport. He was like their GM figure. But obviously, since that finished the other month, yeah. So he's been mainly doing that all summer. And it's news to me that he's appearing on Lucha Underground. That's certainly. I thought he was doing some kind of Netflix TV show, some kind of like cop drama or something like that.
He was involved in some project. I can't remember the exact details of it, but he was trying to definitely make the pivot over to acting or hosting, right? Like he wanted to get involved in like actual like sports, like broadcasting. I know
seems like a lot of those guys, post the WWE career, if you're not one of those workers who can really kind of tear it up in the indie scene, it seems like your other avenue to transition to is acting. But it's obviously it's really, really tough to try to break in.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think like outside of like your Batistas and like who has kind of really made a mark,
made a mark. No, but you can see the attempts like a John Morrison. I mean, Cody's now involved on
Jericho.
Arrow.
Talks about a lot in the second book. I think he talks about how difficult it is that he just couldn't have, nobody would open any doors for him because they were like, oh, you're just a wrestler, basically.
That stigma still very much exists. As much as as successful as The Rock and now John Cena are. Like how many roles really are there, I suppose, for like kind of big, pro wrestlers?
Yeah, especially ones that don't have the same kind of name value that a John Cena or a Dwayne Johnson or even a Dave Batista present as well. It's a lot tougher of an industry to break into.
We got a couple questions about World of Sport specifically from Jake, who says, what feedback have you heard from fans in the UK for World of Sport?
I've heard feedback from a variety of people. I've heard from sort of older people who used to watch World of Sport back in the 80s and they weren't fans of it. They thought it was too choreographed and to them like, oh, it used to be real back in the 80s sort of thing. And
when they were shooting.
Yeah. And then just, you know, regular fans that go to a lot of UK shows haven't been fans of it all. Too quick camera cuts. The production's been all over the shop. I've heard some people say some of the matches have been pretty good, such as like I think Will Ospreay against Davey Boy Smith Jr. That got a lot of praise. But basically, the main sentiment was that you can see these guys all around the UK have a lot better matches than you can on World of Sport, basically.
Do you think that World of Sport can work to a mass audience in the UK, or is it something that it's going to be hardcore wrestling fans that you either appeal to or you alienate them, and it's not going to be... Is there a product out there that could have a monstrous following? Because it's something we'll experience next year when the WWE is on Fox, and it's a big leap to go from cable to network and having that kind of a following.
I think the problem World of Sport suffered with was that basically it had the problem it had with World of Sport was that they didn't introduce any of the characters. They just throw matches out there completely cold. I think it opened with like a 6-man match or something like that. And yeah, but I think what they need to do is have introductory packages for all the individual wrestlers. Nothing too long, just like a 5 or 10 minute sort of thing where they say who they are. It's like Davey Boy Smith Jr. came out and they didn't really go into his backstory about, you know, the British Bulldog being his father and things like that. And obviously he's then moved over. He's born in Canada, but now coming back to wrestle in the UK. And I think that was the issue that they had, that ITV, that seemed to be their bread and butter for their other reality shows, but they didn't do it for this one. And if you were going into that show blind, you wouldn't know who any of the people are. You might not know what the stipulations were for the matches they were putting on. I feel like they should have spent more time giving each character some backstory, and rather than focusing on all the jump cuts and trying to fit in as much as possible. It just seemed like they were trying to be too much like WWE and less of a British wrestling product.
Daniel wants to know, what would you like to see from a season 2?
I think, well, just what I've explained there, more introductory packages, more fleshing out of the characters so that people can get behind the different characters and maybe introduce like some more cohesive storylines rather than just throwing things out there blind. And the production was the main issue for a lot of people, was the fact that the camera cuts were just too quick, and also the replays were of things that didn't need to be replayed, and it just seemed a bit hokey and just like OTT, like trying to be like WWE Light. And I think if you are going to have a TV product, especially in the UK, it can't be WWE Light, because you've already got WWE. You need an alternative to that.
Yeah, to me, that's the ongoing struggle of so many promotions, is that they have this template. So many people are fixated on the template that WWE has presented for their entire lives of how wrestling is presented. And I think there's that fear that if we deviate too much from it, we're going to lose the fan base that we're trying to attract. But in doing so, you're not going to be able to outdo the production of a WWE. So you have to have a drastically different idea of how to present wrestling. And I just think it's a lot of people that when they're putting significant money behind it, it's a very scary idea to present something different and risk alienating people. But we've seen so many examples time after time of a light version of WWE. The audience has more WWE than ever. They don't need a subpar version of it. Yeah,
I think it's especially tricky because, like, as wrestling fans, we're all kind of conditioned to watching wrestling that one way, right? So for somebody to have to come in with the pressure of trying to match some of those expectations while trying to reinvent at the same time, it's very difficult. And money, it's expensive too, man, like to do good looking TV. So that already kind of discounts a lot of people from trying it.
And it's also realistic expectations of what kind of audience are you looking to attract. If you are New Japan coming into the US, the idea of you getting onto a network that's going to attract 3.5 million viewers, that's probably out of your grasp. Are you happy having just a fraction of that audience, but you do have a distinct product that might not ring true to everybody, but it's also like you have to understand what your place is in the industry. And sometimes you're not going to be able to take over the world. You're not going to be able to have that audience that maybe you feel your product attract, and it's going to be a long way before you're even thinking that large in scale.
What do you guys think if they presented it more as a quote unquote real sport, kind of like a UFC sort of style, then that would attract more viewers? Because obviously we mentioned Lucha Underground earlier, and that's gone so far the other way, but obviously that's not attracted a decent viewership, has it? So do you need to go more down the, you know, sort of shoot style sports for it to be more popular with fans?
Is that too niche though? You know, there are companies that are out there, but like let's say a UWFI came around today on a larger scale. Do you guys think that would be successful, or is that too niche of a style and a product?
I think the most successful hybrid at the moment is New Japan, that is trying very much to present it like that feels like a sport that still has the feel of still being professional wrestling and the benefits of professional wrestling that mixed martial arts isn't able to benefit from, like controlled outcomes and having an idea of direction of where you're going and being able to execute that. That's where pro wrestling should have the advantage. But I do feel that typically, I think you can present a product that is as entertainment driven as you want, but there's good and there's bad. And with Lucha Underground, it started off with tremendous buzz, but I think they went so far that when you're talking about characters coming back from the dead and gods possessing human life forms, I mean, there's few people beyond me that's going to be following that weekly. That's it's easier than ever now to cut out excess wrestling in your just weekly viewing habits, because there's so much of it. You don't have time for it all. That if it's not worth your time, it's very easy to drop stuff and you're not going to miss a beat because there's so many other great products out there to follow.
So just before we continue with some of these questions, I do want to remind everybody, I have put the link up there. If you guys want to join us live, we have the ability now to take your
We're taking calls,
video calls, or whatever you want. If you just wanted to have the audio, I think there's a capability to do that too. So feel free, don't be shy. Click on the link right here. I'm going to post it one more time. So let's go to one more question. Who says, Hansi, our good friend Hansi says, Martin, are you worried that the WWE could be monopolizing the UK scene to some extent, or do you think it is still kind of healthy?
I think it's very much still very healthy, but I think WWE just want to monopolize wrestling full stop, don't they? Because obviously it goes to show they weren't having any plans of doing an NXT UK until the UK scene started getting hot, and they were like, oh, look at these crowds they're getting. Especially, I think, when ICW ran the Hydro for the first time and they got like 6,000 people or whatever it was, that's when WWE really started like making waves into the UK. And I think they're seeing that WXW in Germany are getting a hot product as well. That there's rumors that WWE are going to be moving into Germany as well. So, I mean, I know it sounds like I'm putting my tinfoil hat on, like it's a big conspiracy theory, but it just seems like anytime a scene gets hot, then WWE have got to come in and have their piece of the pie.
There's no conspiracy. They've stated that this is what they're
like their big buzz term now is global localization, which is exactly what you're seeing in the UK. They want to have a worldwide series of NXT offshoots. They want to have NXT Japan, NXT Germany, NXT Latin America. That's the goal. And I think they experienced, about a decade ago, going down into Mexico, they just got television there. And they learned after a while that that's a part of the world that they're very loyal to traditional lucha libre, and CMLL and AAA were able to withstand that. But I think the WWE is that much stronger now. They have the resources to really attack any of these parts of the world and go into. And the UK is going to be the first major experiment to see where that scene is 18 months from now. And if there's still all these thriving promotions, or is it just going to be feeder systems that anyone who gets hot is going to be scooped up into this system and become NXT UK talent exclusively?
Yeah. I think the backlash to something like this happening is kind of interesting to study because, I'm sure you have a lot of vocal fans, loyal fans who love the way things are right now. But like, if you're a wrestler who is a part of the scene, do you see this obviously as a benefit? The fact that, WWE is paying attention to us right now, and if my dream is to work at WrestleMania someday, this is a much easier way to do it than to have to move to America.
Oh, definitely. And you're finding that with your Pete Dunnes and people like that. And obviously he's the higher end of the UK wrestlers. You've got this retainer with WWE, but also you can go out and work for other promotions if you want. But then he's also getting flown over and doing takeover specials with Tyler Bates. So that's like really great for him. But I suppose it's not great if you are on one of these retainers and they're not using you. Then, you're not getting as much exposure as Pete Dunne, Tyler Bates, and Trent Seven.
And that's the next step, is that you have the monthly tapings now is the next logical step to have touring. And then it's how much demand is also out there to see a regular product. We're seeing it domestically now that live events are down. There isn't the incentive that there has been in years past just to go to a live event. And I think part of that is right back to discussing how much product's out there. Is there that incentive to go spend extra money to see a live event when you're getting hours and hours and hours every week of WWE television?
Well, like for me as a fan, I feel like there's a lot more incentive if there is some difference between the promotions. You know, like if a promotion presented, you know, more shoot style, and if I was a fan of shoot style, well, at least it would be a different flavor from what I would get from something else. If a Lucha Underground somehow did live touring and live shows, I think that'd be really interesting to see. Wouldn't you love to see a live sacrifice?
Well, the problem is with Lucha Underground is that if you are a fan of this show, you can't replicate that as a live event experience. It's very much a TV show.
Yeah.
And going there, sure, you'd get some great wrestling with the wrestlers, but if you are a fan of the show for whatever reason, that's not going to be replicated, and you can't go on tour with that.
They have done live shows though, right? Like
they did a few. Characters. They did some in Texas. But
Mania,
I think they were just showcase events, weren't they, for the network,
yes,
Velray Network? Yeah, they weren't actually live shows. They were just showcase events at TV events.
You would certainly have to kind of think about what the production aspect of it would be. You could pre-shoot a lot, but you know, are you going to do that for every single town? Like pre-shoot backstage vignettes?
Yeah, and is that something that's really going to be a fan-friendly experience? Watching something on the big screen.
When you think about going to like a Vegas show, for instance, they'll probably do plenty. That's like, you know. Even when you go to indies, they'll cut to like backstage skits, you know?
I would say those typically, though, are not great.
Yeah.
Like the backstage stuff at an indie show, right. I mean, it's usually, to me, more of a negative on the show than a positive. But it's
a little tougher.
It obviously depends. As you look, Martin, as we get closer to the end of the year, how would you assess right now the placement of Progress and ICW that are, you know, very much affiliated with the WWE, and what their role in this whole relationship is going to be, especially as they're looking at adding a tiered system to the WWE network? Is that where they fit in? Are they ultimately absorbed by the WWE?
Well, it's interesting with ICW because as far as sort of fan hype, they seem to have fallen off a cliff this year. Some of their major events have happened, and I've not seen anybody talking about sort of like Ishram's house party in July, and obviously they've got the big one coming up in December at the Hydro again. And there just seems to be no hype behind that event. So it's interesting to see what I think the best thing for ICW would just to, you know, get enveloped in WWE and then have the tape library on the network. Whereas Progress is a different one because obviously it's not a very well kept secret that the three guys that run Progress are also running NXT UK or having a large part in that. And I think that's really affected their product as well because Progress have had their worst year in terms of storylines and what they've been doing sort of like in front of the camera. The match quality is still there, but as far as the storylines and who they're pushing and the amount of matches that they're putting together, it's been really weak, and I've seen nothing but negative comments about them. So it makes you wonder whether their eyes off the ball of Progress and so much on WWE and NXT UK that it's really affecting their own product. So it will be interesting to see what happens with Progress next year because they seem to be so involved with NXT UK that their own promotion's suffering for it.
And how about the WWE's television situation in the UK? They had stated, you know, a long time ago that they were looking at the end of 2018 to have some kind of an announcement. Here we are with, you know, about 6 weeks left in the year. Do you see the WWE staying put? And for those that are optimistic that they're going to get some incredible increase in their rights fees in the UK, do you think that that's going to be the case? What is the overall kind of demand, you would say, at the moment for their television product?
I can't see it being very high at all. The numbers are obviously you've got the time difference because obviously Raw's on at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, so you're not getting as big of a live viewership, and the numbers on Sky Sports are just dropping and dropping and dropping, and Sky have got so much invested in other sports such as Formula One, NBA basketball that they've just acquired this year that I can't see them turning around to WWE and giving them a massive offer because they've still got the WWE events on Sky Box Office, and who realistically is paying for those in 2018? Nobody, are they? So I think the benefit for Sky is less than it is for WWE, and they certainly won't be commanding a massive rights fee unless, I don't know, someone like BT Sports fancies having WWE on their station, but I really can't see it.
Let's Jonathan wants to know, Martin, where do you rank Nigel McGuinness amongst British wrestlers all time?
It's interesting with Nigel McGuinness because he was around the time when obviously he had those great matches in Ring of Honor, but he was around the time when the UK scene was in a real slump, and he certainly did some great work in Ring of Honor. and some stuff in the FWA in the UK. So I'd maybe rank him in the sort of like, maybe not hitting the top 10, but I'd definitely say he's in the top 15, top 20. For certainly those matches he had in Ring of Honor with Daniel Bryan and the like. Sorry, Bryan Danielson at the time.
Where do you see his career had he not had the injury and wouldn't have had to have, you know, taken a step back in his career? Had he gotten into the WWE same time as Daniel Bryan in 2009, where his career goes at that point? Because I see the WWE looking at him and Danielson and seeing going a lot harder with McGuinness at that time in their history.
Well, and certainly his character work that you saw briefly in TNA or Impact Wrestling was really good. He was obviously really confident on the mic, and I think that would have really got him across better than Daniel Bryan initially in WWE. But it's hard to know what happened with those indie guys around that time, because it's easy to look back in hindsight and go, oh, yeah, because CM Punk and Daniel Bryan were so successful in WWE, then so would Nigel McGuinness. But it's really hard to tell. But as far as his mic work and his character work, I think he would have gotten on really well in WWE.
You guys want to go to our first video call?
Yes,
indeed.
Would love to.
All right. Jake from the Windy City will be joining us very quickly. Let me just unmute it. Jake, actually, you have to unmute your mic if you just click the. There we go.
Can you guys hear me now?
We can hear you. How you doing, Jake?
Hey guys, how are you guys doing today? Doing great. It's a chilly, snowy weather here in the Windy City. So yeah, it's about 30 degrees here. How are you guys doing?
Very well, very well. What would you like to talk about?
Is it your birthday, Jake?
No, not today.
Birthday sign in the background.
Oh yeah, yeah. What's up with
Whose
that?
birthday is it, Jake?
Oh no, that's just a long time ago. It's been stuck in my basement for like many years. So I just don't worry about that. So. 21st of January.
Of January.
2 days before mine.
That's way behind me. So
Christmas tree up all year. You just don't let it go away.
Yeah, I like the style of these banners. So, all right.
What's up in Chicago, man?
Not much. It's snowing pretty heavily, about a couple inches right now. So, how about you guys in Toronto?
It's wonderful, but I can guarantee you everyone hates our weather reports. So we'll just move on to the whatever you would like to chat about, Jake.
What's your question, Jake?
Yeah, sure. So I'm looking forward to NXT Takeover this Saturday. Yeah, it's about only 4 matches. So, you know, I've been watching a lot of NXT for the past year now, and I've been really enjoying it. It's definitely my favorite wrestling show this year so far. So, but I just want to ask you guys a couple topics here. What do you think? Excuse me. What do you guys think of the current trajectory of NXT right now? Do you think they're good? Do you think they should stay on the WWE network, or do you see them going to probably like a TV deal, probably on Sportsnet or FS1 here in the States, or Sportsnet in your guys in Canada?
I think it would ultimately come down to what kind of offer they would receive. Obviously, NXT was not part of the whole deal with Fox, but if FS1, let's say 6 months into the SmackDown on Friday night experiment, they're doing tremendous numbers, they want more WWE product, and they're willing to spend a lot of money to put NXT on FS1, I don't think the WWE hesitates to take that money. They have shown an ability that if the broadcasters are willing to pay money, big money for content, they're not going to keep it exclusive to the WWE network. I think they'll find other programming that I don't think losing NXT would have a drastic effect to people's desire to subscribe to the network. I think the pay-per-views are going to keep most people locked in.
You could keep takeovers on the network.
On the network, yeah.
And that's, I mean, takeovers as well are something that could be something FS1, maybe they want to spend money for those as well. Mm-hmm. It would not stun me at all that NXT gets onto television at some point, but the idea that the WWE would walk away from money just to keep it on the network, I don't think that would be an obstacle in the least.
Yeah, and sorry.
What do you think anyway, Jake? Do you think they should keep it on the network or have it as a TV special?
I'll say this: I'm pretty much just using the network for NXT and sometimes for the old archives as well. So I'm a little conflicted on it, but if it does come off the network and it is going to television, I'm going to might consider canceling my subscription. So yeah, it's a little 50-50 on my part, so I would say.
Well, yeah, just to jump in there, because I know a lot of people who just watch the network for NXT, so it might affect their subscribership quite a bit if they were to get rid of NXT from there.
It would be a big blow, certainly. What's your other question, Jake?
Yes, speaking of network television, since Fox is going to be the new content provider for SmackDown, it's going to be obvious that they're going to have to make some formatting changes for SmackDown, right? Or some sort of that.
I think in terms of the roster, you'll probably see big changes in terms of the talent you'll have available on SmackDown. But as an actual show format, that's going to be something to watch. Certainly, if they're going to adjust the overall tone to the show, I'm hesitant to assume that it's going to be a widespread change.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Because since going on to Fox, to me, in my opinion, there should be a little bit of a makeover. To be honest with you guys, with a little bit of the commentary team as well. I love Corey Graves, but I believe there's too much of him every week. So I believe they should fix up the commentary team as well if they move over to Fox.
Who would you like to hear? Who would make an ideal team for you? Because that to me is always the problem they run into.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily have a lot of depth when it comes to their commentary, and that's why you see guys spread over onto a lot of shows. I
mean, personally, I've been seeing all the rumors about about WWE contacting Daniel Cormier, and he's been doing a great job as a commentator for the UFC. So I would like to actually see him try out on that.
Yeah, I think he'd do very well at it if he goes into it with an open mind, knowing what the job entails. It's another question if he's going to enjoy doing that, because it's a very different broadcast than calling a UFC pay-per-view.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because you're the WWE style, it's more overproduced. You have a lot of people, different people telling you what to do in your ears. So it's a much different ball game.
Thanks a lot, Jake. Thanks for joining us this week.
Thanks for taking my call, guys.
Thank
See you next week.
Thank you. Hey, I just noticed on the comments someone had a fantastic idea for Lucha Underground. Have it as a Las Vegas Cirque show. I don't know who wrote that, but
that's kind of what I would consider. Having if you want to do special effects and all that stuff, it kind of lends itself to that. But is somebody willing to put that money into
that's the whole thing, isn't it?
Well, you don't even have necessarily the funding to. I mean, they had to reduce the budget significantly for this most recent season. At one point you looked at Lucha Underground, and here they were able to create this world that they could do a lot of different stuff that the WWE couldn't get away with. But over time, were they really able to get away with it? I think it turned off a lot of people. As many people that looked at it as an alternative, I think there was a breaking point where this was just not for them. And whoever it is appealing to, it was not supported in the amount of numbers. And it was stunning that Ultima Lucha, the last 2 weeks of the show, were the second and third least watched episodes of the whole season.
Do you find it though that that ultimate deletion stuff really took off the way it did? Because I look at that and I kind of hear what you talk about in Lucha Underground, and it feels like they're very much the same type of tone. I would say maybe Lucha Underground is a bit more serious about it. Maybe that's the difference.
The difference to me though is that the ultimate deletion was a segment on Impact. When we saw it as an episode of Impact, I think there was a lot of pushback. A promotion of Ultimate Deletion, I think, would fail spectacularly.
Interesting. Okay, let's go to a couple more questions because I don't want to have Lisa be here forever.
She's snoozing in the background.
I feel bad on your anniversary.
It's her wedding anniversary.
Okay, let's
go. I'm taking her out for tea tonight.
She's listening to Lucha Underground pitches.
Okay, a couple more questions here. Daniel Baker, why do you think the attendance figures for the latest WWE tapings in Manchester were so low?
I don't know. It's interesting though, don't it? Because the year before they had AJ Styles win the title there, and then also with Becky Lynch. I think it goes back to that thing we were saying earlier about there's so much product in the UK that WWE coming over to do a SmackDown taping ain't that special anymore. So people, on a Tuesday night, what if it was a bit colder on that night? I can't bother to go out tonight. So there's so much product now and so much out there that people aren't even bothered about WWE bringing a taping over anymore.
Does the time of year have anything to do with it, you guys think? I feel like November really does feel like a lull until maybe January comes back and you get Wrestle Kingdom, you get the Rumble all the way until Mania.
I can see that argument in the States, but they've been doing that November UK tour forever, and it's, you know, they've had many successful tours of the UK, but I think it goes down to just a certain burnout, and as much as you can, it's a company at the moment that doesn't have that generational star that people are willing to go out and see. Maybe Becky Lynch becomes that, but she's not there now. Maybe there's a number of baby faces that could rise to that level, but they're not there at the moment. So I think that has a certain impact, and we're seeing it mirrored over here in the US as well, domestically, that live events are down, and it's a part of their business that they've flat out said that we know what the problem is, we know how to fix it, and in 2019 you're going to see how they're going to change the presentation of live events. But I think it comes down to missing stars, and also what is the incentive to go to a show? If the novelty of seeing certain stars isn't there, then why are you going to go see a wrestling show?
Okay, one last question here from Chris from Australia, who says, what are your opinions on Progress's tour? First of all, before we even get to him, Progress, do you have a preference?
Oh, I've heard him once. He slammed it down. Progress, correct?
Progress? Oh yeah, that's just what I was saying off air. I was like, if you guys call it Progress, I'm storming out of here. No, I think also when I saw them at Mania, the rear Jim Smallman said the chant doesn't work if it's Progress. It only works if it's Progress. So yeah, let's go with Progress. Yeah.
Okay. What are your opinions on Progress's tour of Australia and the United States this year?
Well, it was interesting. Obviously, the US tour had a lot more press than the Australia tour is, but it still blew my mind that a British wrestling company, independent wrestling company, irrelevant of their ties with WWE, were doing a tour in Australia, and obviously they've got some connections with the amount of promotions there. The issue that I had was the amount of time it took to get on the VOD, because by the time that the Australia tour, it was like months later, and it was like no one really cared about it anymore because But it was great. I watched them back after, and it was great to see all the Australian talent that they used on there. I think Robbie Eagles was on some show, and obviously he's getting a lot of press now with the New Japan stuff and everything. So, yeah, I mean, fantastic that British Wrestling Promotions tour in the US and Australia. I mean, the US seems more accessible. I mean, Australia just seems like another world. So I really hope they go back there next year.
Expensive to fly to, I imagine as well.
Yeah. As we wrap things up, I want to chat a bit about the podcast and how things are going with Ollie Court and Benno, and where all the listeners can check it out here at Post Wrestling.
Well, you can check it out on the British Wrestling Experience.podbean.com, and we've got his own feed on iTunes, but obviously it'll pop up on the Post Wrestling site. Obviously, because I've been over in Toronto on holiday, Benno and Ollie just uploaded a show talking a load of stuff. The latest Red Pro Uprising show, the Progress show from the other weekend that Benno went to live. So, yeah, definitely check that out. You can usually find the feeds on postwrestling.com, and all the links are on there.
Yep, your own very own feed, which you can everybody can find at. Well, you can go on iTunes, just type in British Wrestling Experience.
Yeah, it comes up on there.
Yeah. When did you three first meet? How long have you three known each other?
Well, it was more through, actually, I think me and Benno had done a podcast before, and then it was just through Twitter. I'd seen some of the stuff he'd written for Indie Corner, and then Ollie through his voices through his work rather from Voices of Wrestling. So I was like, oh, these two guys would be great on a podcast. And then we've met up at some shows. I think the last time we all hung out together was Strong Style Evolved, the New Japan shows in the UK this summer.
Excellent. Well, I highly recommend it. I love listening to the three of you.
I love the variation of English accents, which I got a bit of a lesson from about today from the three of you.
Indeed, obviously, I've got a heavy Yorkshire accent. Benno's from Liverpool with his Scouse accent, we call it over there, and then Ollie's got more of a Southern accent, and that's only just a tip of the iceberg when it comes to UK accents.
We have the most accents per capita of any wrestling network out there. I think is that safe to say?
Do we have accents too?
I would say John has more of the Canadian accent on certain inflections, I'd say, when he says certain words.
Which words?
Out, definitely. It's got to be.
I got called on this the other day that I pronounce a lot of N's at the end of words. I put too much emphasis on the N at the end of like knowing, or I was like, I've never noticed this in my life.
I've never noticed that.
That's how I talk.
Where does this A thing come from, though? I've never understood that. This A Canadian thing.
I might say A, but like
I don't even notice us saying it all that much.
No.
I don't notice it. I think it's more just a I don't know.
Stereotype.
Yeah, it's like
it's more of a Bob and Doug McKenzie stereotype, I would say.
Yeah, it's like the WWE's UK set for accents.
Or maybe we just like been so self-conscious of it that we just weeded it out, just like how John stopped saying right now, you know.
Yeah, they just torture yourself to just eliminate it from your vocabulary.
Hey man, thank you so much for
thank you so much for having me, and thanks for everybody for sending the questions and really appreciate it.
All right, let's go wrap up the second ever Cafe Hangout. Way and I will be back on Friday with our Thor review here on the Cafe. We'll also be joined by Brent Chittenden to chat the life and times of Stan Lee. And then this weekend, Saturday night, we'll have a post show live from this very post office with Braden, Davey, and myself. And Sunday night, Way returns for the Survivor Series post show and maybe some calls.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a word that ends with N to try to mock you, but I can't come up with one right now.
All right. Well, from Post Office West, thank you everybody for hanging out.
All right.